Hey there, I'm Miriam. I'm not a botanist or a horticulturist, just a student in the Mojave Desert, and I'm here with my emotional support humans, Nick and Martel, to share some planting tips. Today we'll be looking at ways to help our newbies establish faster. That means planting methods to encourage root systems that support self-sufficient and thriving plants. The best time to plant is fall, when plants prepare for winter by sending energy underground into root development. In spring, plants focus on leaves and flowers with fewer resources left over for roots. But what gardener can resist spring planting when all the nurseries are in full bloom? Let's dig in. So there are a lot of really committed people out there growing natives and desert-adapted plants. The trick is getting these guys out into the open desert after having been in idealized nursery conditions. Hopefully, they'll get out there, naturalize, bring in lots of wildlife, blooms, shapes that move in the wind, aromas, and reseed to expand the landscape without any effort on my part or very little. First, you want to put the plants out in the general environment they're going to be planted in for at least 1 week. That's called hardening off. Then secondly, try and learn a little bit about the plants and where they're from, and that's going to help inform you on the best places to plant them. The next challenge is getting them out of the containers. And as you can see, they come in a variety of containers. Most of us are familiar with these black nursery pots, but you can also get natives mail ordered from a really great source, Las Politas, and they come in these little bags. The National Park Nursery grows in these cans, which are really great since they're growing for restoration. They deep root the plants, so all the plants have a nice root system. When they put these out for restoration, they're going to water them maybe a couple of times, and they're not going to get much care. So that deep root system is really important. We're going to look at planting 3 different container types and a box tree today. Each comes with their own challenges and some shortcuts that we've found for successful planting. Before we get started, let's take a worm's eye view of planting. First, make a hole twice as wide as the root ball and loosen the dirt on the bottom and sides for water percolation and root growth. Next, soak the hole and let it drain twice to saturate the surrounding soil. Moisten the soil as you backfill. Create a water well outside the root ball, then fill the well with several inches of mulch. Be sure to leave the crown area mulch-free to prevent rot. For extra credit, place a large rock on the south side to shade the soil. Now sit back and wait for wildlife to roll in. I'm going to do a little planting from these bare root bags. These are mail order plants. One of my most cherished desert plants is a rosa milkweed, which is our true desert milkweed here. And this is so small, I'm just going to dig a little cradle for it. I've removed any weeds from the area first before starting. And rather than take this out of the bag because it's very loosely rooted and the whole root ball is going to fall apart, I'm going to just check my hole, make sure it's about right for that, the size of this kind of amorphous root ball. Of course, I've pre-soaked this so there's a little bit of moisture in the ground, and let it drain. As is our custom, I'm going to hold the shape of that root ball in my hand. Make some cuts in this bag, like 3 cuts. I'm going to set that in my hole in the bag, backfill. Cut this knot off, make a few other little cuts. And pull the sides of my bag out. So rather than taking this out of the bag like you would with one of the black cans, I'm leaving it in the bag so that those delicate roots don't get disturbed. This is the best way to ship, and give it a little water. while I'm here, I'm going to throw a little wildflower seed in there that I collected last year. This desert chia. Now you can see how tiny it is. So rather than dump a bunch of seed and have it all come up in one spot, I'm going to put a little loose sand in there, shake it around, and then sprinkle it out. So I've got seed mixed in there. Since I know I'll be watering this little plant for a while, this seed has a great chance of coming up, and it reseeds, and I hope to see it like come up everywhere here. So this little milkweed, I'm not worried about it being eaten by the rabbits because it has that latex that they find repugnant. But I am worried that I might step on it, and I'm also concerned that it's a little tender plant that's been sort of in hothouse conditions very recently. And we're getting into hot weather. So I'm going to cage it because then I can remember where it is to check in on it. And a little burlap shade cloth so that I can help it adapt to being out in the open. You can get this at any garden center in a roll, and just weight down the edges with rocks. You do want to make sure the cage is dug in pretty well because you get those gnarly winds out here. And I'll check in on him once in a while. We should be good to go. Here's a plant from the National Park Nursery. How great is that they make some of their plants available to us? I'm planting on this hillside where digging a deep hole like this is going to create a lot of disturbance and erosion. I'm also trying to protect these wildflowers. So I'm going to use this plant auger to drill a nice concise hole, minimum dirt disturbance, and it'll be about the diameter of this. As always, pre-water the hole a couple of times. Make sure there's some good ambient moisture. And what we're going to get in this can here is a mesh bottom with a couple of metal pins holding it. I like to call them the grenade pins that you pull before you get the explosion of flowers. So we're going to pull those out, and this little mesh thing will drop out. First, we have to make sure this is nice and loose. We've already pulled the pins. There's the mesh bottom. Shake it up a little bit. If you just turn these upside down like you would with the normal pot, the soil is just going to fall apart. So again, I start teasing it out, backfill a bit. Here's my backfill dirt. Partially backfill, pull it up a little more, and we keep going like that until it's fully planted. There, we guessed the depth pretty good. So on a hillside like this, I don't do a well all the way around the plant. The water's going to want to run forward anyway. So to make it look a little more natural and not just have a donut around it that looks like the aliens built it, I just push the dirt to the front of the plant like the natural grade, and I just carve a little well in back. Just a little reservoir to capture the water. Since it's going to want to move forward anyway, I don't need to worry about filling the front of the plant. And from here on out, that's going to be my little spot. And just a little bit of gravel to give them a good start. Here's a great little nursery tag for talking about when the seed was germinated, etc. And we're done. Just to give you a little bit of encouragement when you're looking at your tiny little plants in the ground, this is the same plant as this. This has 2 years of growth. So in 2 seasons, we got this out of this. The ideal tree for planting is a young one in a 15-gallon container. Smaller trees establish faster with less water and outgrow an older box tree within a few years. But this particular specimen had such great form that I just had to have it. We're going to position and plant this boxed ironwood tree today, and we want to do that without disturbing the roots. So these cannot be removed from the box. We drop the box into the hole and remove the sides. Now that we've got the planting hole nice and moist, we're going to pull the sides of the box and backfill. We've already broken with a hammer at the bottom of the box so that the roots can get through. And we're just going to leave that wood in the ground to rot out. Looks like you guys nailed it. Also, while the hole's open, it's a good time to go in and examine the roots, which overall look pretty good. But I do see some of the small roots have followed the box. You want to encourage them to go out into the surrounding area. So we just fluff them, and it's okay to break them up. Very often plants come with a root memory of the container they were grown in. So we try and redirect that a little bit. Also, while the root ball is open and before we start backfilling, this is a great time to stake. A common mistake that people make is that they buy a tree that already has stakes and they think that this part of it doesn't need to be done. But actually, it's really important to move these stakes. In the wind, they act as a joystick and they will move the entire plant, which tears roots and it makes it harder for the plant to get established. So we stake them independently from outside the root ball just until the tree gets its own strength and the roots are able to expand a little further out and stabilize in winds.
Beautiful.
To anticipate the ongoing care of this tree and make sure that I do some root zone and not surface watering, I'm going to install these hydrospirals, which are pretty cool. They've got perforation for aeration. They move the water down towards the root with the spiral, and they come pre-rigged with a little emitter in case I ever want to, put these on standard irrigation or I get too old to drive a hose around anymore. I'm going to do 3 for a tree this size, put it outside the root ball. In the interim, I am going to have to hand water the tree to make sure that it gets plenty of water while the roots are moving outward and downward to where we're providing water with the hydrospirals. Our next step is we're going to backfill with dirt and compact and then mulch. So we're backfilling with the topsoil that we pulled out when we dug the hole, which is really important to preserve because that's the biotic living crust that was naturally here and contains all the bacteria that can synthesize nutrients for the plant. So we're defining the well, the water well, that's going to be a basin to hold moisture, and we will mulch this area to keep that moisture in the ground. We'll be using gravel mulch, which I prefer to wood mulch because wood mulch dries out, can fly away, very often has colored additives, chemical additives, and is also very flammable. As we're starting to shape and define the well, we're also trying to make the water collection such that it stays away from the crown of the tree right here, because that can add to disease and rot. It also keeps the feeder roots moving out this way so the tree's better anchored over time. What we often do is spray the soil while it's being backfilled to keep some moisture in it, but we'll still need to do more to compact. There are a lot of air bubbles down there. We like to take the butt of a shovel and poke some holes all the way around. Let some of them go in quite a ways. There's a lot of air pockets down there. We'll go all the way around the tree doing that, and we'll fill this one more time with water, which will percolate down in those holes. the dirt level's going to go down a little. We'll finish our backfilling and then we'll mulch. When you're watering with a hose, a slow stream is actually much better than a big blast. So a little patience is required. I love using hand tools for this kind of work because you can really get it right the first time and also work on having the finished product look really good. So a specimen tree like this can really stand out. We put a bit of gravel in the top of the high-row spiral here just to keep the evaporation from happening too quickly. There's a fine line between not enough compacting and too much compacting when you're planting. You want to leave enough air in there so that bacteria, good bacteria, can thrive and that you have enough drainage that you don't create any anaerobic conditions in the soil by too much water. On the other hand, you don't want a lot of large air pockets inside because the roots will not like that and it could kill the plant. What we're going to do is we're going to step on it, but we're going to compact with our heels and try and always push under. One mistake that people make is they stomp, 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 and that over compacts the soil, and you can damage the root ball if you do it too close. But by pushing like this, we're again pushing that dirt to around the base of that root ball. I think that's good. Now let's mix in our surface gravel. Here's a little tip for saving money. You can use driveway gravel for the bottom layer and then top dress with some decorative rock from a nice rock yard that's maybe something you want to pick up in other areas as a design element. If it's not too late in the day, your tree is going to appreciate a little spray on its foliage because it's going through a little bit of shock now, whether it shows it or not. This is just going to help it take up some more moisture. We're going to tie this tree right here, but it's going to create a wound when it rubs against in the wind. So I'm just going to take a rag, or I have this leftover piece of pipe insulation. Now that it's turning to summer, I don't need it anymore. And we're just going to put it right there so that once we tie it, we're not cutting off the circulation of the branch. There's a little bit of give there. And if it rubs against there, it's not going to create a wound. And over time, we'll shape it so that it's a beautiful, open, very natural looking landscape plant. So I still have a lot to learn about edibles and fruit trees in the desert, but I am going to start with a fig tree because they're very forgiving and desert adapted. This is a Turkish fig. Unlike almost everything else I plant, I am going to amend the soil some. We're using some oak leaves and some sticks, layering that up like a lasagna, watering in as we go. And I've got this great one-touch wand, so I can just turn the water on and off, and I don't have to have a running hose to set down, pumping out water somewhere else. Sprinkle that in. So the first step is to loosen up the root holes so we're not just yanking it out. And what I'm going to do here is stomp on this can a bit. Maybe kick the bottom or bang the bottom, roll it, and stomp on the other side just to loosen the sides. So it should come out pretty freely. There we go. Now you can see this big tree in a 15-gallon can. Sometimes it's very impressive to buy a huge plant for less money in a smaller container. But this is the condition we have. This is very root bound. And I can see some of the roots are even coming up onto the surface here. And this has been in the container for so long that you can see there's root wrapping around the stake. So we want to make sure that this really gets some extra attention. At some point, everyone's brought home a root-bound plant, and they always struggle, like these two that grew for a while and then suddenly pooped out. Check this one out. It's really bad, and if I don't address it now, it'll never thrive. First, a good water dunk, so I can tease all the roots out without tearing them. If you really want to geek out, try adding some worm tea or some kelp. But I've just used a bottled product here that I also use for cuttings. Let's help this guy out a little bit. What a mess. Look at this wrapped all the way around. This is creating a lot of stress. So after planting, you'll need to do a little worm tea soil feed or some Super Thrive or something like that to remind the plant that life's worth living. In an extreme case like this, you might want to trim off some of the foliage to lighten the plant's load. And when I plant this, I'm going to plant it kind of low, backfill with loose dirt, then pull the plant up so that the roots can fall downward. The weight of the dirt is going to make the roots fall downward. Once in the ground, I want it to look more like this instead of like that, which is how it's been for all this time. I'm suspending it off the bottom, and I am dropping dirt in so that that dirt will go in around those roots and take up some of that space to keep them nice and spread out. And I'm going to jiggle it upwards so that the soil can settle in. I want those roots to be sort of hanging down inside the soil. Now that these are potted up in containers, I can take care of them until I have a good place to plant them. Can you lay that on its side, Nick?
Yep.
Because I want to make sure that I get the bottom of that, because that's probably where the roots are. See, there's a whole mat of root, and that is not going to take up moisture, especially if it's at the surface. The roots have actually grown around the bottom of the pot, and they're coming back up. Get that all loosened up. Fluff out these roots. I'm going to cut this one that's bound around because it's never going to do anything but go around and around. Then I think it's ready to go in. Now, because I don't want to use chemical fertilizers, I've got some gopher bags here with some alfalfa pellets in them. This is really a great nutrient, and this isn't just some tree hugger solution. It's what commercial rose growers do to help keep their roses fed and going to market looking nice. These gopher baskets are usually used to plant plants in. So you dig the hole, put this in, plant your plant in an area where you have problems with tunneling. But in this case, we're going to use it for the alfalfa pellets because you can bet the gophers are going to find these underground once we put them in and dig them out. Also, with that, I finally found a good use for a nylon stocking, which is to stuff them with worm castings. So we're going to do these 2 bags. There you go. And I'm going to drop these in close to where I'm going to be watering, doing my deep watering can. So they'll deteriorate over time.
More.
And I think, yeah, there we go for tunnel right there. There we go. And this guy's good to go. Here's another tip for garden vegetables, that sort of thing. Starbucks gives out the grounds to go. So I saw that a Starbucks that I went into had some set aside. They just give you these bags for free. And coffee grounds are a great thing to add to compost that's going to be used for vegetables. I would not use this on cactus or the desert natives. We're going to water that in. And we've planted it a little bit low, but we're going to correct that by digging out the soil around it. All right, go ahead and backfill, guys.
Mud fill?
Yeah. Backfill away. And I'm going to give this guy a little bit of homemade worm castings tea. Also a great additive that feeds your soil, not your plant. But if your soil is well fed and conditioned, you shouldn't need to feed your plants at all. Chemical fertilizers are delivered to the plant's roots right away, and they take up the nutrients from the chemical fertilizer. But in doing so, in applying chemical fertilizers, you're shocking the bacteria in your soil, which is designed to support the needs of your tree. So you're sort of working at cross purposes by doing that, and it's much better to just feed the soil. Worm castings is a great way to do it. And you can make your own tea at home. We're making 100 gallons of it right here. So again, we're going to cut the tape and make a nice well and mulch. So we did a big no-no when we planted this tree, which was we planted in the midday sun. On top of that, with all the root work that we did, this little tree lost most of its leaves. It was a little touch and go for a while. It got a little extra care. But now look, we've got a little fruit starting to form. All's well that ends well. Whether your landscape vibe is formal or natural, start your plants off on their journey with a good set of training wheels. And pretty soon, they'll pass you on the highway. We'd love to hear about your planting hacks in the comments. And for more about what we touched on today, check out the website.